Project management is a discipline within every field of endeavor, so understanding the nature and structure of projects is critical to long-term success anywhere. In our previous lesson, we learned what a project is and the 4 factors that we must consider in all projects. In this lesson, we are going to look at the process groups in PMI's Project Management Body of Knowledge, PMBOK, which represent one of the most widely used phased methodologies. Phased methodologies are often referred to as traditional project management because phased approaches have been in use the longest. In the phased approach, a project is generally planned from beginning to end at the very start of the project, including the work, resources, budget, risks, and other factors expected throughout the life of the project. According to the PMBOK, 5 process groups represent the 5 project phases: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. These phases progress from the beginning, initiating, when a project is just a good idea, proceeding through all the work until the PM pays the last bill and files the final report, closing. Let's look at each of these phases in turn. The initiating phase of a project is when the organization determines that a change of some kind is needed or that there is a problem to solve requiring a project. Recall from Lesson 1 that a project can be any size and any cost. Therefore, the initiating phase primarily includes figuring out what the problem is and who is going to be responsible for solving it. During initiating, an executive sponsor for the project identifies a PM, and the two work together with other stakeholders to draft a document known as the project charter. Under the PMBOK structure, the planning process group constitutes approximately half of all the project processes. The reason for this is simple. Adequate attention paid to planning and forecasting improve the chances of project success. Many failed projects can track the source of failure to missing elements in planning. The executing process group is very straightforward. Executing is where the team accomplishes the project work itself and where the PM focuses on following the plan. The monitoring and controlling process group runs concurrently with the executing process group and is where the PM checks the progress and adherence of the execution against the plan. Most of what happens in this process group feeds back into adjustments to the plan, where appropriate, and modifications to the work methods in the executing process group. The closing process group is the smallest in terms of processes and is also the most overlooked. In closing, the PM pays the final bills, closes contracts, and documents the lessons learned. Lessons learned are critical in project management because successive projects will look back to previous projects to see what went well and what went wrong. It is the lessons learned in project documentation, the part that is usually skipped, that allows knowledge to carry from one project to another. The project management process groups in the PMBOK illustrate the basic flow of a project or a major project phase. From figuring out that something needs to be done, initiating, to figuring out what to do, planning, there is a lot of work to do before the project actually starts. Executing and monitoring and controlling help the PM stay on track and the project to keep moving. Finally, closing ties up all of the loose ends and makes sure that future projects are just a little bit better because of what we learned from this one. An organization may use a phased approach to manage significant components of a larger project, constituting what is fundamentally a project within a project. For example, a major systems acquisition with prototyping components may structure the development of the prototype as its own project with its own sequence of phases within the overall phased project. There is no rule about how to break down the work or how to divide phases, so manage projects in a way that makes sense to you and your organization. Throughout this lesson, we have only referred to the PMBOK process groups, but be aware that there are other phased methodologies. Additionally, keep in mind that the choice between a phased methodology and an incremental methodology such as Agile is not exclusive, even in the same project. In truth, most projects use some sort of hybrid approach that is part phased and part incremental. Later in this series, we will continue looking at phased methodologies with project charters and integration management. For a look at incremental methodologies, consider enrolling in Harrisburg University's courses covering Agile and Scrum. Check out all of our degree and professional education programs at www.harrisburgu.edu.